I ended up presenting The Real Hustle purely by just knowing some people in the magic world. So the people who were making Darren Brown were friends of mine who I just discovered in the magic world, who had introduced me to magic. And the same company that was making Darren Brown Channel 4 show were starting to make a program called The Real Hustle. And some people recommended me to go and meet, and the rest is history. Then what happened after that was we made a show for 11 series. We did over 100 episodes. It got sold to over 70 countries around the world. Possibly one of the most successful shows on the BBC. Myself and my co-writers, co-presenters wrote over 500 scams and carried out over 500 scams during the course of The Real Hustle. It was an incredible experience, and an experience I will never forget, and an experience that I think is utterly unique. And it's unique not in the sense that we're the most successful con men in history, because obviously we did it for a TV show. But what's unique about it is when you look at the world of security and scams, there's two types of people you're going to come across. You're going to come across security experts. Okay, these are the people whose job it is to stop hustlers and con men getting away with what they're getting away with. But the other side is you're going to have ex-criminals who have reformed and who are coming forward and saying, look, this is how I did it. We stand in the middle. I stand in the middle because I carried out over 500 scams. Most hustlers and scammers you'll find have done one, maybe two scams all their life. If they were an ID theft, then that's all they would do. If it was check fraud, bank fraud, that's all they would do. But what happened on The Real Hustle, because it was a TV show, we did over 500 different scams. So we've done overpayment scams, pickpocketing, cheating at casinos, door-to-door salesmen, burglaries, robberies, jewel thefts, all of those put together. So by having that experience of doing all of those 500 scams, it becomes then very clear to start to understand why these scams still work. Why are we still falling for them? And you start seeing very clear patterns that all these scams have in common. If you look at an architecture of a scam, essentially they're all the same. And yet we still fall for them to this day. I get really passionate and love keynote because I kind of have seen it as my mission to go out and educate people and companies about scams. Primarily, why do we still fall for them? So I talk about the psychology of every scam. Why do we still fall for it? Why does, after thousands of years, we're still falling for essentially the same scams? And also, parallel to that, I talk about why systems fail. And I use my knowledge in magic. I talk about the greatest diamond heist that ever was, which was the Antwerp Diamond Center. And you know, you look at the system, it's a little bit like, the keynote starts a little bit like an Ocean's 11 meeting. You know, here's the safe. Here are all the security things. How do we get in? And yet they did get in. Well, how? And I explain, you know, why systems can fail when people who are using them don't understand what the systems are there to do, when we don't understand the dangers. And talk about the psychological principles of why people still fall for scams. But the other thing I've become really passionate about recently is also, and I've been doing a lot of keynotes recently, and I've enjoyed them a lot, has been about storytelling. Because I realized that scams, you're telling a story. You're trying to get someone to buy into your story. Magic, you're telling a story, right? Pick a card, I'll find it, you know, and I'll find it by the way you've moved your eyes looking at the deck of cards. You know, you're telling a story. All of a sudden someone goes, oh, really? Do I do that? You know, you're engaging stuff. And I've realized that scams, magic, and storytelling are exactly the same thing as what salespeople are trying to do. And I thought, well, I know all the tips and tricks of how to hold someone's attention, how to get them to do what I want them to do, how to get them to think what I want them to think, because I do that all the time as a magician and as a scam artist. And I can translate all those skills into when someone has to sell something, someone has to sell an idea in a room. You know, what does confidence look like? How would you go about convincing someone that the story you have is better than the story that the 4 other people waiting outside that room have. And I have to say, I've been enjoying that immensely because I think it's tremendously useful. And it all comes together. I also do a couple of tricks whilst I'm doing keynote, just to put real physical examples into what I'm trying to say. And the keynote's it's kind of more image heavy rather than writings and graphic. I'm much more into talking rather than just showing. And the other thing I love the most is doing a Q&A with people, because I find that I know enough about my subject to be able to deal with an array of questions, whether they are specific to security or psychology or how things work. And I find that actually that inspires an extra depth into any keynote situation that I found myself in. So the after dinners is a completely different event, but it's on the same themes. And what I like to do after dinner is do a little bit of cabaret. So I'll do a couple of magic tricks, which involve people coming up to the stage with me. But it's all centered around the themes that I've talked about already in the beginning of the after dinner speech, which is things that went wrong in the real hustle, working in television and scamming, and how those two things sometimes clash completely and disaster ensues. I also talk about unbelievable scams that I've come across, true stories that you listen to and go, how did that ever happen? And bring that all together with a sort of final piece with audience participation, where 4 members of the audience come up and join me on stage, and we kind of do a sort of a live lie detector test, and I try and see whether they can lie to me and get away with it. And it's a lot of fun because people get to see it in action, so the whole room is involved in trying to figure out what kind of poker faces their colleagues have got. So it's a lot of fun, and it differs there. But I also, when I do after dinner speaking, I also offer an extra special, if you like, part of the event, which is me sat down at a table, usually pre-dinner at the reception, and I exhibit card cheating. There are very few people who can do some of the stuff that I show people, dealing from the bottom, second from the top, false dealing, actual techniques that you will find card cheats using today, whether that be in casinos or private games. And again, I see it as part of my job. It's the same job. Yes, it might be fun to watch. It's a bit like a magic trick, but I'm saying to someone, look, it looks like I'm shuffling the cards, but not a single card has changed order. Now that you know that, if you're playing in a game and all of a sudden the same people keep winning over and over again, hopefully a little light will go, I've seen people who can shuffle a deck of cards and it looks like they're shuffling, but they're not. Maybe I'm being taken here, and can I stand up and walk away from that table? So it's part of the same thing for me. It's all about showing people what is possible. I think businesses need to understand that it's on them to educate both their employees and their customers. Don't forget, customer is also a way in to a business. If I compromise your customers, I can have access to you. So it is the business's responsibility to educate all that have any contact with this business. Now, how do you do that? You don't go about just handing over random bits of protocol or bits of hardware or bits of software and say, use those. You actually need to start educating from what the dangers are. Why are we doing this? Why are we using, I don't know, an antivirus system, a firewall? What are the dangers? What happens if we don't use it? Now, it's very, very easy. Explain all that stuff to people, and they will start understanding why it's important to use it and not just do something because someone's told them to do it. Okay? There are multitude of examples of people who are the gatekeepers, people who are head of securities, people who are the first port of defense for a company, really having no interest in the company because it's not their money, right? They just work there. They've just been given a random protocol to follow, but they don't quite understand because the dangers of not following it has not been explained to them, right? And you expect them to care enough about your company to protect you. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. And especially nowadays when we have automation entering companies. There's a lot of people out there who are looking at their jobs and thinking, when am I going to be replaced by a machine? Now, those are the people who need to be more motivated into why they should care about their companies. And education is the only way we can do this. And actually, I think companies should be doing more to educate their employees in their private lives as well, to make sure that their homes are safe, because we're seeing a lot of attacks to companies happen from the employee's point of view. So if I can compromise your home Wi-Fi network, right, and then I can capture some passwords that you use for your work or your bank account or anything like that, I can use that not against you, but against your company. I can use it to go into your company. So I think companies have a big role to play in promoting security, in promoting education about security, and actually going back to basics. Basics like, if you get a phone call from out of the blue urging you to take some financial action, don't. Whether it's to do with the company or yourself, don't. You know, how much CEO fraud do we see? You know, the email that comes from the CEO who's stuck somewhere and some money needs to be sent over immediately. Loads of companies have been taken by that. Why? Because they don't know about it. They haven't been told about the scam. There's one criticism I have about companies, about our police forces, about our security organizations, if we're very slow in making a scam well known. And I can tell you from experience, from having done 500 scams, from having done the real hustle, the moment you publicize a scam, it's very difficult to carry out. You know, we did a scam in London called the mustard squirt. This is where you'd squirt mustard on someone's jacket and somebody else would go, oh, you've got something on your jacket, take your jacket off. And in the action of taking your jacket, they would steal your stuff. The Met Police told us that since we made that really public and really famous, because the clip went viral, they saw numbers of that scam go down. Because someone who'd seen the clip, mustard or something, someone said, take your jacket off. And no, I've seen this. I've seen it. Yeah. And what happens is the hustlers just go away. If you go to someone, I know what you're up to, they're going to move on. But how are we going to do that when the first instinct of every company when they've been compromised is to go, don't tell anyone? That's ultimately playing into the hands of con men. Now, with the new rules of GDPR, things like that have to change. Companies have to come forward. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. And education is the number one way to protect your customers, your clients, and your business. I think you're likely to be caught out in a scam when you're not thinking, when you're not expecting it, and when you're panicked. So I talk about the 5 principles behind every single scam. And they are things like misdirection. So your focus is away while something else is happening. Pickpockets use that a lot, okay? Somebody touches you on the shoulder whilst taking away your wallet from another place of your body. But also misdirection works on a text message scam, right? Did you just spend $1,500 in the Apple Store in New York, right? How is that misdirection? Well, I'm panicking now, right? Because my focus has been directed of someone stealing my money, right? Next step is click this link to verify that it is you. So I've been directed, I've been panicked, and therefore I'm about to do something really stupid, right? Misdirection. Time pressure is another thing. So any time, any deal approaches you and says, you've got to act now, or they go away, you need to take a step back and think. That phone call that you've said, we've just had these stocks and shares come up. If you don't invest now, I'm going to have to give them to someone else. Fine. Any genuine deal should be able to give you enough time to think about it, right? So time pressure, you've got misdirection, you've got another thing called the good deal syndrome, right? Good deal syndrome is when I come up to you and go, I really shouldn't be doing this, but I've got a great deal, right? Look, the truth is all of us love a good deal. All of us love the idea that we're getting something for nothing, that we're beating the system, that we somehow are getting something that not everybody else is entitled to. But all that does is it shuts you up if you're the victim. Because if you've done something illicit, who are you going to go to? If I say to you, these cameras, I'll give you one 50 quid, they cost 500, but, we've had and you kind of know that they sort of fell off the back of the lorry. When you open that box and you find a sack of potatoes in it, because I've switched them out, because I'm not going to give you a camera worth £500 for 50 quid, who are you going to go to? You're going to go to the police and going to go, officer, I seem to have bought £50 worth of potatoes. What did you think you were doing? I thought I was buying a camera off a man in a white van in the street. So that's a lot of scams have got that built in because they get you to do something illicit, which means that you cannot follow up. You're not going to go after them. And then the final two things are social compliance and social proof. Social compliance, meaning that you react to badges, uniforms, high-vis jackets. You see someone in a policeman's outfit, you stop thinking. You go, well, he's a policeman. How do you know? One of my favourite scams of the Real Hustle was standing outside hotels and asking people for their luggage or for their key cards or anything like that. And people wouldn't think. It was one of the first scams that we did. We stood outside a hotel, opening a taxi. Hotel didn't have a doorman. I pretended I was the doorman. I opened the taxi and said, let me take your bags for you. And even when people would go, oh, I'd rather take the bags myself, go, do you know what? If I don't take them, they're going to fire me because, that's my job. I'll bring them straight up. Right? Oh, okay. They go in, I take off with the bags. You make assumptions every day in life, and life would grind to a standstill if we didn't. Imagine every time you walked into a bank, you had to go, now, is this really a bank or has someone set this up? Life would grind to a halt. So that's an area that con men really use. And finally, social proof, the idea that you do what everybody else does. Can I park on this spot? Well, 5 other cars have parked, so therefore I'm okay, right? So if I know that as a hustler, that you are looking for clues as to how to behave by looking at people around you, I just manipulate your environment. I just get other people to do what I want you to do, and you will follow suit. Again, we all like to think we're clear-minded individuals with a will of our own, but actually we're more sheep-like than we care to admit. So I would say that any scam that employs any of those 5 principles has got a very, very high chance of success.